the Brahmastra.
I need to know more about this.
Yeah. So the Brahmastra is part of the Mahabharata. I mean, you've talked about Mahabharata in a bunch of
the Vimanas and
yeah. So the Mahabharata is one of the two Hindu epics. The other one is Ramayana. But Mahabharata's more interesting. It's more complicated. It's like a lot of different stories interleaved together. And the Brahmastra is the equivalent of the hydrogen bomb.
And how is it described?
It's described as a weapon of like mass destruction, going to annihilate like human population, should not be used at any cost. There's like a moral contract, like you clearly have to be like, violating so many things at a deeply moral level to even like wield it. And it's not actually accessible to most warriors. There's probably like 2 warriors in the world in that era who were allowed to use it. And it has to be passed through special access. Like a teacher has to like pass it on to you, the secret to use it. Almost like you think about it as like the equivalent of the nuclear code, right?
Yeah.
And Arjuna had it. This particular character in Mahabharata called Arjuna, he was allowed to use it. And then this other person was this. Basically, Arjuna had a teacher named Drona, and Drona had a son named Ashwatthama. And Ashwatthama was always jealous of Arjuna. Arjuna was not Drona's son, but he was his model disciple. And so Drona passed on the secret of the Brahmastra to him. And Drona's son also wanted it, but because it was his son, he also passed on the secret to his son, even though the son wasn't as good as Arjuna. And during the war, Arjuna and Drona fought on the opposite sides. It's just circumstances. And his dad died. Ashwatthama's dad, the teacher, died in the war, and so the son got mad and like unleashed the Brahmastra, and Lord Krishna had to come and save the planet to not get that destruction force.
How old is the Mahabharata?
Again, there's a lot of different opinions on this, so I don't actually know for sure. My understanding is at least 1,500 to 2,500 years old. Like 1,500 years ago is the minimum. 2,500 years ago is the maximum. So it happened in some period in that 1,000-year time frame between that. And there's still like it's still unclear if like a lot of it is just like being mythologized, and what actually happened was just a war between kins. There were 2 groups of people, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and each side thought they were fighting for their own rights and justice, but at the end of the day, you can crudely understand it as like essentially fight for the kingdom. Basically, there was a previous generation and 2 brothers, and both the brothers had a bunch of kids, and those kids were warring to get the next in line, and that ended up being like a massive war, and a bunch of other allies fought on each sides, and so many amazing weapons were used as part of the war, and a lot of these weapons are like extremely like described in extreme level of detail that is pretty incredible. Like there's a lot of detail around like targeted weapons, so you could precisely identify a target and just shoot at that. And then
does it explain like what the weapon is?
Yeah, so there's one weapon called the Divyastra where you can just specifically target any particular person or a group, and it would just automatically direct itself and do it, almost like a semi-autonomous weapon. And then Lord Krishna had this weapon called the Sudarshan Chakra. It's basically a discus, and then you can just release it, and it'll go and specifically identify somebody and chop off their head and come back to you. Right? It self-directs itself. So what I was amazed by is how interesting it is in terms of all the autonomy in the weapons, semi-autonomy or autonomy, where the weapons could just be directed at people or like directed at a group of soldiers, and it will just go and do its job and come back to the wielder. And there were so many different astras: Divyastra, Varunastra, Nagastra. Brahmastra is obviously the ultimate, the hydrogen bomb equivalent. And all of these are like described in a lot of detail, and like who has access to it. And of course, it's mythologized, so it's described as this like these arrows in your like in back of your shoulders. But you could understand it as like somebody having just access to a lot of weapons, and then whoever was powerful would go capture and colonize and like gain power, and essentially a fight between a group of cousins. That's the bottom line of that story.
Now, if we think of history as this linear progression from caveman to us,
Yeah.
and we hear about autonomous weapons that were written in the Mahabharata somewhere around 2,000 plus years ago, we go, well, mythology.
Yeah.
But if not, if there's been some sort of rise and fall of civilization, if there
Yeah.
has been catastrophic, whatever it is, asteroid impacts,
Yeah.
shifting of the poles, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's caused great disasters, you can imagine that these people are remembering a time where there was some sort of very advanced civilization. And this is what they're describing. Like, if you knew for a fact that there had been a great advanced, technologically advanced civilization, when we have evidence that they had some technology, like the pyramids of Giza and stuff, like how did
Yeah.
you do that? I don't.
Yeah.
There's some technology involved, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have evidence of the technology.
Yeah.
But if we did, if we knew for a fact, you would look at the Mahabharata and go, oh, this is history. They're just explaining it in a kind of crude contemporary way for the time, arrows instead of, semi-autonomous drones
Yeah.
with exploding heads on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we have now. All those things that they're describing. Hydrogen bomb, semi-autonomous and autonomous drones. I mean, they have autonomous fighter jets now. Like, they don't need people anymore. Like, this, we're in that area right now. So when you read about something like that from the Mahabharata, you go like, okay, what was really going on?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's always been my fascination with those epics, and the level of detail with which they described all these weapons and who had access, different levels of access, the status required to have access, and how it was used in the wars, different formations of the soldiers. Like, they had all these like crazy formation structures, like forming the army like a lotus, forming the army like a there's something called a chakravyuha, like literally like it has to have concentric circles, so you cannot like actually get into the innermost circle without going through the outer circles, and then you can get killed by each of the flanks whenever you're trying to enter in. And the secret of how to actually break into these vyuhas means formations, was only known to a few people. And it's incredible. Like, you could say, okay, like somebody had to be extremely skillful to have that sort of like visualizations and imaginations of describing a story like that. And obviously, like, Tolkien has done an amazing job with Lord of the Rings, in creating so much detail. At the same time, like, a lot of it actually coming true in real life in some form. Again, not exactly the same weapons, but similar style, makes you wonder, was there actually something around then? And people have tried excavations in all these areas. There's like two main areas in the Mahabharata. Hastinapur was the name of the kingdom. And people have done excavations around there and have like found some artifacts that might date back to those years. But there are also some details that are described in the epics that don't quite align with reality. For example, all the main warriors in that era were described as like very tall, very big, 7-8 feet, whatever. I don't even know exact numbers, but our history studies by archaeologists also say that people who lived in those years in those regions were probably not more than 6 feet tall. So it's not clear exactly like what happened, what was correct, what was not correct, and we just have to keep probing more. But I find the idea fascinating to think of like what could have existed in sacred texts that was only partially communicated to the next generation and having a lot of like reinterpretations. Another thing that is very interesting to think about is Vedic math. So that basically Vedic math is like a branch of mathematics that some people in India are grown up learning. Like I read it myself too, and some people actually practice it just to be sharper at mental math for doing their exams, like GMAT and things like that, GRE. And it has like a line in the Vedas that says, oh, like 1 from the last digit, 2 from the first digit, whatever. So many different ways of multiplying two different numbers, like 97 times 96. Oh, like subtract the last two digits, put it in the right, multiply the first digits, put it in the left. That's the result. And then you wonder, like, oh wait, the Rig Veda is so old. It's as old as it's the oldest sacred text out there. How is it describing computation? That feels
Right.
very unreal. Like, did they actually know or understand advanced forms of computation even back in those days? And
how old is Rig Veda?
I don't exactly know how old it is.
Why don't we put that into Perplexity?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's find out.
Yeah. Yeah, it is technically the oldest sacred text out there.
And so what's interesting is I wonder how old the stories were by the time they were written down. Like how much of it is relayed person to person for years and years, just like the Bible, before it's ever actually written down. Scholars usually date the composition of the Rig Veda to about 1500 to 1200 BCE. So its oldest layer is roughly 3,200, 3,700 years old today. Like, if there really was, like, every ancient culture has a story of a flood. Everyone, they all have an apocalyptic
and
story.
Mahabhar had the same thing.
Was it?
Mahabhar had the same thing where there was a big, like, almost like a tsunami-like thing. I don't exactly know what it was called, but that was the collapse of Lord Krishna's kingdom, Dwarka. After the war, a lot of people died, but some people survived, and even those who survived got wiped out by a calamity or like some kind of like a fight among themselves. And most of the people who participated in that era actually died.
Here it is. The primordial, how do you say it, Manu?
Yeah.
Manu flood. Classic Hindu great flood myth where the righteous king Manu is warned by a divine fish about an imminent deluge that will destroy humanity. He builds a boat, loads it with his family. It's like Noah and the Ark. It's the same thing. With seeds and animals, ties it to the horn of the god in fish form, which tows the boat to safety until the waters recede and the world is repopulated. They all have the same story.
Yeah.
That's what's really crazy.
There is a concept in Hindu philosophy called the yugas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm reading a book about it right now.
Yeah. So there's like different yugas, and yugas are like thousands of years. And the concept is that the yugas keep cycling around. And so like we are in the Kali Yuga right now. And before that was a Dwapara Yuga. That's when most of Mahabharata happened. And before that, there was a Treta Yuga where the Ramayana happened. And before that, there was another Yuga.
What is next after Kali Yuga?
No, there is nothing next after Kali Yuga. It goes back to the first one. I forget the name of the first Yuga.
Because the interpretation that I'm reading is that we're not in Kali Yuga anymore, and that Kali Yuga ended in the 1900s and Dwapara Yuga started then.
No, we are in Kali Yuga right now.
100%.
100%.
So why do people have different interpretations? Like, is there?
Is that true?
There's like a guru interpretation. There's like one specific guru.
I see.
That has this interpretation that Kali Yuga ended in the 1900s.
Okay.
And that we're moving on.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I don't know who's right because it's an enormous cycle, right? The cycles of humanity.
Yeah, thousands of years.
Yeah,
thousands of years. And
so
these are the four yugas.
So why do people have different interpretations? I'll tell you the book I'm reading.
Yeah.
See if this book is discredited, young Jamie. It is. It's by a guy named David Steinmetz. David Steinmetz. The book is called The Yugas.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is when someone's got their own interpretation or some guru's interpretation, it doesn't totally align. It's hard to know who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
Keys to understanding our hidden past, emerging energy age, and enlightened future. Yeah. So go back up to that again. So this is in the description. See what it says that? where it says in 1894, an Indian sage gave us an explanation not only for our hidden past, but for the trends of today and for future enlightenment. So there's like one guy's interpretation that this guy is going off of.
I guess the difference might be that